Get started here. I know the other council members will be here shortly. Welcome to the January 13th meeting of the Portland City Council. Would you please call the roll?
Fritz.
Here.
Fish. Saltzman.
Here.
Novick.
Here.
Hales.
Here. Welcome, everybody. I want to give you some ground rules and logistics for this afternoon. This is a continuation of our hearing from last week, from January 7th. We're in continued deliberation on two items before the council, both related to the comprehensive plan. One is item 27 that adopts new and amended supporting documents, and the other is item 28, which is the comprehensive plan itself, which is, I think, where most people signed up to speak, and the item that we will take first. Regarding those who signed up at the previous hearing last week at SEI, we've reserved testimony for you in the order in which you were signed up before, so hopefully most of you were able to make it back. If time allows, we'll hear testimony from others who signed up today who weren't there last week. Want to acknowledge that we've received additional written testimony that's going into the council record that each of us will have access to. Any additional electronic testimony received by the end of today's hearing will also be added, and we'll see if we don't add some time for people to be able to get further documentation in to us. As we did the other night, we're going to limit testimony to 2 minutes per person, just to make sure, again, we try to hear from everyone. Obviously, it's helpful to be succinct. It's also helpful to be very specific and talk about a specific recommended policy, or if you're talking about a specific site, let us know what that address is, so that we've got that clarity in our record and for our follow-up. Obviously, it's also helpful if you don't repeat what other people have said. This is not a numbers game in the sense that we're trying to get all the issues and all the questions about should we zone this property this way or that way before the council. So it's most important that you be specific and tell us why we should do something rather than that you have 50 people with you on the topic. This is the last of the 5 initial hearings dedicated to the comprehensive plan. In the next steps of the process, the council's scheduled 3 work sessions to discuss with each other and with staff the testimony we've heard and to craft amendments. Those sessions will be here on January 26th, February 2nd, and February 23rd. They're public meetings, and you're certainly welcome to attend and listen or watch via cable or web, but we won't take testimony at those hearings. They're council work sessions. We ask our staff questions, we debate potential amendments. We don't take action at those work sessions, but we do vet what changes we might make to the draft in front of us. I've asked my colleagues, and I'll hold myself to this, to identify the amendments that they're interested in at the first of those work sessions so that, again, there's plenty of time for council deliberation. Although today's the last of the initial hearings on the recommended plan, we will schedule a hearing in April, reopen the evidentiary record at that time to allow the public to comment on the council's amendments, as well as obviously on the plan as amended. So it's my hope that at that point we can make decisions on the amendments and take a final vote by the end of April. So that's the plan and schedule. Again, welcome and thank you for your patience and that some of you signed up and were there for a long hearing last week. So we definitely look forward to hearing from you this afternoon, and we'll take up the list where we left off on item 28. I guess you need to read that item.
Yeah, and they're item 51-1 and 51-2.
Okay.
You want just the second item?
Now, why don't you read, yeah, sure. Why don't you read the second one for now? Sure.
Okay, 51-2, adopt a new comprehensive plan for the city of Portland, Oregon.
Okay. And then let's just return to the sign-up sheet, please.
Okay, the first person I show is Christy White. Right, and we're doing 3, Martha Stephen and Jesse Gail Molly. Sorry if I mispronounced that. That's number 30, number 51, and 52. Martha, Steven, Jesse.
Folks are here.
Gail,
Come on up
Molly.
and join Ms. White at the table, and we'll let her kick off this afternoon's testimony.
They'll be followed by Ken Diebner, or maybe it's Denver, Ron Lyle, and Barbara Hamilton.
Okay.
Oh, Christine Yoon first.
All right, Christy, you're on first.
Thank you. Christy White, representing ESCO. We submitted our written testimony earlier and have submitted another copy here today, so if you have 2, you can recycle 1. We recognize that this phase of the process is just the comprehensive plan map phase as it relates to ESCO, and we are requesting the mixed employment designation for the ESCO property. It's currently split designated. We have a split designation of mixed employment and industrial. The reason for the request is multifold. First, we have a corporate headquarters there on the property, and corporate headquarters is allowed on the property because there's currently a manufacturing and production use, the foundry. As I think you've heard, the foundry will be closing down over the next year, which makes the corporate headquarters a non-conforming use, making it an at-risk development for a 100-year-old business. And they're very much interested in staying in Portland, growing their headquarters, potentially growing their research and development and office. And the mixed employment designation allows them to do all of that on all of their property in a comprehensive way. What's important about that is that the mixed employment designation is recognized in the code as an industrial and industrial-related designation and continues to allow all of the industrial uses that ESCO or others might engage in. It also does allow some office uses, but what's important about the ESCO proposal is ESCO is in the Giles Lake Industrial Sanctuary Plan District, and we're not asking to get removed from that plan district. So all of the protections that come with that Industrial Sanctuary Plan District would stay on the ESCO site. We would advocate for an expansion of Subdistrict B, which limits office uses in that area to a 1-to-1, a very low FAR. And any additional FAR you have to pay into a transportation management fund. So to the extent 17 seconds. So the extent any of this has traffic impacts, those will be studied if we get part of the map. And then there's a second step to get the zone change, which would then be another traffic study. And if this property was ever sold, there'd be yet another traffic study because of a land division. So with all of those protections, we asked to be included on the map. Thank you.
Thank you. That's helpful. I hadn't realized about the FAR limitation before now, so thank you very much.
Welcome.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Marty Stiven. I'm here on behalf of Richard Passantini of Belmar Properties. Belmar Properties manages the properties that are controlled by the John Passantini family, of which 30 are impacted by the comp plan map update. Most of those sites are retail businesses. We're supporting of the plan's efforts and the city's effort in updating the plan, but we have a concern about the mixed-use dispersed plan designation. 6 of our properties have that plan designation proposed for them. On three of those properties, we think it's an inappropriate plan designation. 2 of those 3 sites are adjacent to one another. They're at the corner of Southeast 60th and Southeast Belmont, northeast of that intersection. They're identified on the plan map as change number 254. The mixed-use dispersed plan designation is the lowest density of the mixed-use plan designations, and it's proposed to be implemented by only 2 zones, CM1 and CE, neither of which allow the uses and the density that we think to be appropriate for the location. On the opposite corner of that site is a 5-story medical rehab facility. It's well-served by transit and other services, and we'd like to see a higher density zone. But unfortunately, that mixed-use dispersed plan designation only implements 2 zones, and it's very limited, and we think that the mixed-use dispersed zone should allow the CM2 zoning. If not, another solution would be to rezone it to mixed-use neighborhood. The other site with the same situation is up on Southwest Gibbs. It's a retail site now, but we believe it's appropriate to have a higher density on it as well. It's zoned commercial storefront. The 2 zones that are proposed to implement the mixed-use dispersed zoning don't allow either the FAR or the height that is allowed in the existing zoning today. So if the plan designation is mixed-use dispersed, the only zones that implement it would not allow the level of development that is allowed today, and we think that's a problem. The solution that we are proposing would be to redesignate both of those sites to mixed-use neighborhood, which would allow us to put a higher density zone on it, or to allow the CM2 zoning to be implemented in the mixed-use dispersed zone, the plan designation.
So these
That's it.
sites are occupied by retail businesses
The
now?
60th and Belmont site is vacant, 2 lots that are vacant.
Okay. And you've given the
And I
Bureau
have-
that list?
Yes.
Yeah,
We've
okay.
submitted written testimony on all of the properties
Okay.
into your record.
Okay, thank you. Thanks
You're
very
welcome.
much. Good afternoon, welcome.
Hi, I'm Jesse Gaimali. I'm the spokesperson for DeVue and Lee family. They own and lease a property located at 6724 Southeast 82nd Avenue in Portland, Oregon. And together with the 2 vacant lots, which is 5 and 6, located to the south of the said reference address. Historically, the parcels to the north and south, the vacant lots, were grandfathered when the zoning changed to residential, since it was currently being used in a commercial zoning classification. The 2 lots were then zoned residential since it was vacant and not being used in a commercial zone capacity. So we hereby request that the zoning be changed for the vacant lots 5 and 6 to the same zoning as the 2 commercial parcels, that is to the north and south of the vacant lots that are currently in automotive repair and sales. And I have legal descriptions and plat map if you guys would like to see it.
Yeah, no, please
For your
just
reference.
make sure you leave those for us. Those will go into the record and we'll all get them, so.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next 3 are Ken Diener, I believe it is, Christine Yoon, and Barbara Hamilton. And they'll be followed by Frank Milan, Nancy Chapin, and Andrew Pagote. I'll get those.
That's all right. Yes, please, thank you. Okay, can't remember who's first, but go ahead. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right, well, thank you for the continuation. My name is Ken Diener. I'm a resident within this plan change area just south of Stark called Plan Change 348 between 16th and 19th. The one thing that's working against us in this continuation is that the mood was set very strongly and very clearly at the hearing last week about the themes of gentrification and the destruction of neighborhoods, what is being lost along the way. Commissioner Novick spoke passionately about his thirst for density, but I'd like to suggest that that thirst is maybe drinking the wrong Kool-Aid, actually. If you look at the 63 lots that have been proposed by the planners, these 63 lots are not on a commercial corridor, they're not on a transit. For some reason, the planners decided that this was a spot zone that they wanted to try to rezone. Every one of these 63 lots is been developed. We've been living in this neighborhood, the least of the people speaking here, 15 years. I've been there for 18. We have residents that have been there for 40. And the only reason for doing a change of zone in a place that's not broken is to encourage tearing down these houses. If you look at the second page that I'm presenting to you, we have 15 lots of the 63 that are single-family historic homes that could be torn down for 6 units, 3 lots, 2 units per lot. We have 110 units in this area already. The only reason to bring these further into density is to tear down 110 units, which are already multifamily. Obviously, new units will be much less affordable. I have statistics here from Preservation and Green Council that says renovation creates only 15 tons versus a new home 50 tons of CO2 each time you tear down something and build new. Or in other words, single family existing only is 12% of the CO2 green impacts compared to new construction.
Got it. So what do you think the designation should be? I understand you don't support what's been mapped, but
We're zoned R5 right now.
so you want to leave it at R5?
Leave it alone. There is no reason to do 348 or 928. 928 literally is that little blue area, and that literally tears down 2 very historic homes. If you look at the picture there, tear them down and build townhouse courtyards. There's 10 low-income housing units on the north end of that little blue block. What planner was misguided to think that he's creating anything of benefit by tearing those existing low-income housing down, if not being encouraged in a worse than innocent way?
But the non-conforming use status of some of that multifamily is not really a problem from your standpoint?
They have been non-conforming for the last 50 years,
I get that.
and they've all been rehabbed.
Yeah.
Every one of these buildings has been redone in the last 10 years. They've been condominiumized, they've been rebuilt, they've been reinvested. My house is circled by apartments that have all been reinvested in. They're all grandfathered.
Yeah.
It's all density. We have 110 units here that are at risk of being torn down just to build new. It makes absolutely no sense.
Mayor, I believe this is in the area that your planner showed me the map. That's just a mosaic of different kinds of development and makes a beautiful mix and the kind of thing that was being called for in other areas where there's more blanket development. So at the last hearing, I mentioned, I thought maybe we should consider freezing the zoning in this area and doing a plan district where we could actually make things so that it would be easier to do improvements and harder to tear things down.
Yeah, because that was my concern on the flip side, is not, obviously, every plan, I was talking about this earlier today, every plan's a plan for change and a plan for preservation, right? And you got to figure out where you want each one. And in some cases, we're talking about preserving a pattern that doesn't fit the palette, the palette of zoning designations, either in the old plan or the new one.
Right.
So
This doesn't have a pattern.
But
It's
yeah,
just a mishmash, and it's a beautiful mishmash.
Yeah, it's exactly the issue, that it doesn't fit the planning bureau. When you're looking at it down there on 4th Street from 50 miles above,
Right.
and you're looking at trying to have some kind of neat thing on paper, this is an existing neighborhood that's one of the standpoint, the highlights of Portland. This is why Portland is Portland. We've been here, thousands of volunteer hours have gone into this neighborhood to make it what it is, and you're trying to move us out. And, I'm here to lose money.
Yeah, no, we're not trying to move anybody out, but
But-
the issue
but
is,
what
this
I'm-
has got to be something that's administratable, for everybody. So, no, you made this point very well, and appreciate this, so,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
No other questions. Thank you, Ken, appreciate it. Welcome.
sure you have the handouts before I start
Okay,
talking.
you bet.
Because they're relevant.
All right, thank you.
And I will be I'll be following up Ken's point.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're set.
All right. I'm Christine Yoon, and I'm requesting a council amendment to eliminate proposed changes 348 and 928. I believe that good design, historic preservation, and minimizing CO2 emissions are not mutually exclusive. I am addressing historic preservation issues in Buckman as part of the Portland Coalition for Historic Resources and as a resident. I was part of a volunteer team that tried to nominate a national registered district in Buckman. You can see the district's boundary in red on page 1 of the handout. And there are other maps of the district on page 2 that show contributing properties. Contributing structures are the foundation of a historic district and have historic worth. This nomination was enthusiastically supported by the State Advisory Committee on Historic Preservation, SHPO, and the National Park Service. And the neighbors voted against the nomination because they feared regulation and gentrification, oddly enough. We asked for a determination of eligibility from the Park Service, which means that the application can be resubmitted in the future as long as there are no drastic changes to the district and no opposition from residents. 49 out of the 63 properties in this area proposed to be upzoned are contributing. 6 could become contributing with minor renovations, and 8 are non-contributing. Of the 8 that are non-contributing, 5 are larger apartment buildings with 11 or more units. So by encouraging this upzoning and the demolition, you're actually destroying density, you're losing affordable housing, and you're also losing this wonderful mix of historic structures that span a period from 1880s to about 1939 to have a monoculture of R2.5 single-family houses, $700,000, 3,000 square feet plus. So the new zoning will encourage demolitions and is at odds with a determination of eligibility and a potential viable historic district, and with Goal 5 of the Oregon statewide planning goals, which asks to conserve historic areas. So that's why I'm asking for this council amendment. Thank
All
you.
right, thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you.
You have my handout?
Good afternoon.
They already-
I think we might have your hand
have
up.
it?
Wendy, yes,
A little map.
yes.
Wonderful. My name is Barb Hamilton. I live at 1405 Northeast 53rd Avenue. And I'm here to oppose the rezoning of a single R5 lot at the corner of Northeast 53rd and Halsey Street to the too broad CM1 or Commercial Multi-Use 1 designation. This is the map that I've provided you.
Got it right
Proposed
here.
change 347. I've provided you this snip of the recommended comprehensive map with this single R5 lot located. The pink island surrounded by blocks and blocks of residential, mostly small-scale, single-family homes. Also included is the Rose City Park Neighborhood Association's previously submitted testimony on our behalf. They also asked that this CM1 rezoning be denied. This stack of signed opposition statements, one of which is attached, which is representative of just the couple hours of my time that I had to devote to this. Over 40 of my neighbors, a 100% hit rate. Once this was explained to them, they all agreed that this is CM1 scale is incongruous to our neighborhood. Northeast 53rd is already a very busy street. It's a jogged street at Halsey. There's a light and a cafe on this residential site. It's heavily it's a bike pathway. There's a lot of residents and pedestrians already. The CM1 would typically, generally, on average, allow a 35-foot or taller building with no parking required. So very few of these people are against change or think that Halsey Street won't eventually evolve. Our concerns are that this broad designation applied to this one single R5 lot at this point in time will not fit with the small scale of our neighborhood and would pressure an already burdened parking and unsafe traffic situation. Some years in the future, most likely when the next comprehensive plan is discussed, this development would make more sense. As you can see by the map, when commercial development has filled in from Northeast 43rd heading east and from Northeast 60th heading west. So my neighbors and I, as well as the Rose City Park Neighborhood Association, are asking you to please remove this small pink square from the comprehensive plan and its C1M rezoning designation due to the improper scale and lack of parking concerns, and honestly, the lack of a smaller scale or more limited option within the multi-use designation. I thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, no, the planning staff mentioned this site to me earlier today when we were getting ready for the hearing. Dumb question that I failed to ask them, which is, how did the cafe get developed on this site in the first place? Was it?
It's been a long-time historical retail site.
Yeah.
It's an R5 zone, but it's been a retail site for years. It used to, way back in the 40s, and I was told it was a barber shop. It was a little market. It's been a multitude.
Predated the zoning ordinance, or at least the modern version of it.
Well, I think there may have been a house with the barber shop in it, at a time, at some point.
Yeah, no, we've got a bunch of those around the city. Yeah, okay.
And I think in plan view, or you look at a list and it's already a cafe, it might make sense. But if you go to that corner and you see what other homes and how small the scale of everything is right there, it makes no sense to wind up with a 35 or 40-foot facade on that site.
Yeah. Okay, thank you very much.
You bet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Let's take the next three, please.
61, Frank Milan. 62, Nancy Chapin. And we'll do 66, Andrew Pagat. And they will be followed by 64, Kristen Green. 68, Dana Denny. And 69, Margaret Davis.
Welcome. Good afternoon.
Hello.
Please.
Mayor and Council, my name is Frank Milan. I live in Northwest Portland. First, I want to thank Councilor Fritz for voting against the West End Quadrant Plan and asking that it be reconsidered this year. In my opinion, the most critical issue in Portland is that development is out of control. This is what is creating a lack of affordable housing and adding to homelessness. While development can be good for the city and create employment, uncontrolled development is not. From my viewpoint, the Portland Comprehensive Plan appears to be rigged in favor of developers. The permitting process of the Bureau of Development Services appears to be rigged as well. Out-of-scale monstrosity projects are being permitted by the BDS that are seriously impacting our city. Just about any building is being torn down if a developer requests it. This is being promoted as inevitable to accommodate a rush of people moving here. However, in my opinion, this is not inevitable. It is development out of control. Portland has been a city with a history of public policy that has protected our future for the common good and for generations to come. In my opinion, the Portland Comprehensive Plan, as it sits now, is subverting this process in favor of serving development's special interests. Perhaps Mayor Hales, you can tell us how the Comprehensive Plan and the BDS have been allegedly rigged in favor of developers since this has all happened since you took office in 2013. But it is also my understanding that the Attorney General's office has been approached with this question. Under what circumstances will the Attorney General's office open an investigation into the relationship between Portland Mayor Charlie Hales and the developers who are active in this city? The media may be very interested in the response to this question. Councilors, particularly you, Councilor Novick, Councilor Saltzman, and Councilor Fish, if he was here, I encourage you to consider the long-term effects of your decisions about development. You can choose to distance yourself now from this mayor and from development, which is out of control. I hope you will choose to defend the integrity of our residential areas and neighborhood commercial districts and protect this city from even more unnecessary destruction, which cannot be reversed.
Thank you. Welcome.
Well, good afternoon. Nancy Chapin. You all know about the 5-story building that is being proposed at 3423 Southeast Hawthorne between two 1-story retail buildings. It's, as you can see, definitely a sore thumb, and it is being asked to be approved. I believe it's not only your right, according to the criteria of context, but your responsibility as guardians of Portland's livability and history to not allow that development to go through. As an alternative, rather than approving a sore thumb in the middle of an historic district, I suggest that the Gateway Town Center be developed as it was intended to be. I've driven on 122nd. I've driven in that area. There's all kinds of property that could be developed now. There's some money coming through for affordable housing. If you have to do an incentive to get some builders out there in that far reach of Portland, do it. If we don't get affordable housing, we're going to end up with an exodus from Portland that will mean we don't need those 300,000 rent units for people to live in, because it's becoming unlivable, as you know, if you attended the concern about housing and lack of it. Think that apartments can be built and occupied within as few as 4 months on Southeast 50th, 52nd, Division, Powell. And now that those funds are available, please use them to develop affordable housing in an area that is waiting for it and ready for it, the Gateway District. And please leave our historic districts so that they maintain their beauty and their history. 5 stories in the midst of 2 one-story retail buildings with no retail and no parking is an abomination.
So that's 3423, did you say?
Yes.
Southeast Charlotte. So Nancy, you've been around land use for a while, and you know how it works, which is the city council doesn't make site-specific permitting decisions.
I know.
We adopt a zoning ordinance, and then people have entitled rights, which they can build to and get a permit for, and it's not a political decision, it's a ministerial decision. So what's the zoning on this site now?
What?
Storefront commercial?
Yes,
And
no retail is planned, no parking is planned.
so it's storefront commercial, and that allows either multifamily or commercial, right, under the current code?
The current code.
But 5 stories, that's allowed by right, or is that by bonus?
It appears to be some bonus in the fact that it's on a little hill, so somehow they figured out that gives them a right to have another story on it.
And you think this should be zoned what?
Well, I think it should be zoned so that it matches the area, at least no more than 3 stories, which you have across the
Would
street.
be the new mixed-use 1 designation, right?
Right.
Okay.
And the other thing is, if you were to do that 2-year moratorium until the plan is approved, which I understand is a way you can do a moratorium, I think that would be a really wise decision right now until this plan is done. It's 10 years later than it was supposed to be. I worked on the one that was approved in the 80s, and it was supposed to be done 10 years ago, and we wouldn't be going through this if it had been done in a timely manner. So
Okay,
just a
thank you.
moratorium.
We're going to try to speed it up. Thank you. Go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, good afternoon. Thanks for the opportunity to testify. My name is Andrew Paget. I represent PepsiCo, and our adjoining properties at 2627 Northeast Sandy Boulevard and 2505 Northeast Pacific Street are home for over 60 years and home to close to 300 Pepsi employees, local residents. While we are enthusiastically support the comp plan, we recognize that the mixed-use urban center that's proposed for this area will impinge on our operations. It's our understanding that the general employment zones EG1 and EG2 will allow commercial truck parking with some limitations, but that would require a change in designation from mixed-use urban center to mixed employment in order to allow those EG1 or EG2 zones to be implemented. PepsiCo is therefore formally requesting that City Council consider implementing such a change. Thank you.
So that you plan to keep operating for the foreseeable future?
Yes, sir.
Okay. The redevelopment's not in your plans?
No,
at this
sir.
point. Okay. Thank you. Okay, next 3.
Are Kristen Green, Dana Denny, and Margaret Davis.
Welcome, good afternoon.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mayor Hales and Commissioners. My name is Kirsten Green. By training and trade, I'm a comprehensive planner and managing principal at Kogan Owens Green here in Portland. Our business is advancing best practices in community planning. We also convene a cross-generational, multicultural community of practice dedicated to diversifying the thought and practitioners of community planning. Building on our 40 years of practice at Kogan Owens, this year we've been studying just the issue before you, how to avoid the mistakes of past planning and investment strategies as we plan for a better future. A proud affiliate member of the Anti-Displacement Coalition, our community urges you to adopt the planning and sustainability recommended anti-displacement measures in their entirety, and to do so with both a historical justice and an equity lens, citywide and without exception. We believe we owe it to current and future generations to create inclusive communities that create economic diversity and opportunity while advancing our shared obligation to affirmatively further fair housing, while complying with local, regional, and state goals for a range of housing choice in opportunity areas throughout our great city. By adopting the anti-displacement policies, you will usher in our new era where we're utilizing best practices, including the Equity Lens tool Bureau staff have been advancing. What we need now with your leadership is supporting, indeed firmly requiring all communities to be inclusive, to take up their share of needed housing, and to overcome NIMBYism and fear of change. One thing good cities do well, as you know, is evolve, and we can evolve beautifully as well as equitably. You have the best planners in the state to support you in this regard. By adopting these recommendations and implementing them in part
to address tiny homes. Fresno, California just recently allowed tiny homes into their city, and this is how they did it. So I thought I would share that information with you. You can look at it. I reviewed the housing section of the proposed comprehensive plan and have my findings here. There's Goal 5A, housing diversity. Goal 5D, affordable housing, and 5E, high-performance housing. Our little homes are very efficient and have a very minimal carbon footprint. In the policies, 5.3, potential, we can serve low and middle income needs. 5.4, types. Our houses are new and innovative and very small. Housing access, 5.12, provides stability. 5.15, curtails involuntary displacement. 5.16, land banking, providing land for our little affordable units to be on. And my favorite, 5.18, aging in place with dignity. In the housing location section, 5.20, please provide access to opportunities. Housing affordability, 5.29, housing cost burden, 5.3, housing prosperity, various types, 5.35, impact of regulations on affordability, 5.42, variety of home ownership opportunities, 5.44, regional balance. And health and safety, 5.49, high performance houses. Our houses are very inefficient or energy efficient, and they have great quality. So as you can see, our tiny homes do fit in the comprehensive plan. They are free to the city of Portland at no cost. So I encourage you to please include these small homes in this proposed comprehensive plan and let me age with dignity in my little house. Thank you.
You may have heard the council earlier today approved the appointment of Eli Spivak to the
Yes.
Planning Commission.
I'm going
He
to
knows a little bit
contact
about
him
that,
next.
so,
and
yes, so
I'll
good.
start working with him as well.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Great news about Eli. I'm Margaret Davis. I'm here for Beaumont Wilshire Neighborhood Association. My comment is on public comment. Along with many people here, I've already made specific comment on the MAP app and in other forums, but I worry that those comments are being erased instead of informing the decisions as they're intended and I believe as required by the comp plan. Here's why. I had the recent discussion draft issued by the Mixed Use Zones Project by the Bureau of Planning. Beaumont Wilshire Neighborhood has had a representative closely following this project. Jack Bookwalter has a background in architecture and is a retired. We see that our comment has been significantly altered. Some examples include our stated strong opposition to CM2 zoning for Northeast Fremont is gone. Our description of the meeting with TriMet, where we were told that frequent service would never be in the offing for Fremont, is gone. Our gotcha, where we found the planners had changed the wording of CM2 criteria from well-served by frequent transit to just well-served by transit, is gone. The unsuitability of the infrastructure on Fremont to support high-density development, such as narrowness of the street and other factors, is gone. In fact, every criticism in our letter is gone, and the only things left are the praise that we had for the planners. We are stunned that a thoughtful, well-researched contribution to city planning would be so changed and demand transparency in the public comment process. All the comments that people have made on the map app and elsewhere, will the decision makers see them? Or are they already deleted by staff who don't want others to learn what Portlanders on the ground believe and know? If this city wants to maintain and build public trust, this is not the way to do it. We have time and again worked within the city's prescribed processes to make our voices heard, but when our efforts are deleted, it makes us wonder what forces are at work. This is evidence that you and other decision makers are not receiving the truth from the voices at the ground level before approving any plans. We urge an audit of the public comment received so far. We also urge you to bring integrity and value to the public comment process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
The next three are 70, 72, and 73. John Washington, Alam Gibrahiwat, and Michael Robinson. And they'll be followed by 74, 75, and 78. Deborah O'Neill, Soren Impe, and Tamara DeRitter. Or, I'm sorry, 76, Joseph Wesley, I believe.
Yes, good afternoon. I think Mr. Washington's first.
Now, I'm going to pass to Mr. Gabriel.
Okay, welcome.
Hello, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here to testify on North Fremont. We are asking to change the zoning from residential to a mixed use. I have been in the neighborhood for the last 30 years.
Fremont and what? Sorry.
North Fremont, from Mississippi to Vancouver Avenue.
Okay.
I have been in this neighborhood for the last 30 years, and I have seen a lot of changes going through, which at the time that we have seen in a great time that there is quite a lot of development coming. And in the last 30 years also, we have seen quite a lot of gentrification that has been done, and still there is quite a lot of disparity of housing and businesses. As there is quite a lot of improvement in the streets around us, Mississippi and commercial, I think there is a lot of improvement that could be done on Fremont, on North Fremont, from Mississippi and Vancouver. I am asking you to change this zone from residential into a mixed zone. It is about 10 blocks, and it has pretty much in each block 2 houses, which is about 1,000 square feet. Changing this street into mixed use, it would bring a lot of the community that has been moved out to come back home. It could be built large buildings in the street. And the reason for that is this street is so close to the downtown or to anywhere. And practically, actually, it should be a commercial or mixed-use street. And this doesn't really destroy any historic impact into this street or to this housing, because the houses don't have any historic significance, but human history. And bringing back this community that has been moved away too far away, like last week people have been talking, I think this would be a good solution to change that street into a mixed zone and giving the opportunity that has been there for many years that have left, people that have left are being left there, that are the only remaining ungentrified people could benefit out of it by changing this zone. Yes, of course, there is a lot of real estate issues that is going on, but this would be a good solution. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Good afternoon, Commissioners. We appreciate you guys allowing us to come and sit and testify before us. I'm here on behalf of the North-Northeast Business Association. And one of the things that is primary that I was sent down here with marching orders to do is to make sure that I continue to inform you that the issue of the plan of economic development just doesn't is just not inclusive only of housing, low-income housing. We're also concerned about retail space. And the fact in the Northeast is that the retail space for the demographic that has been pushed out is basically dwindling. And one of the things that the Northeast Business Association is in support of is the Fremont request for the Fremont change, and that is for mixed use. And also trying to maintain some affordable retail space in the district for some of those businesses to return that was forced out of the environment. We're also wanting to let you know that the issue around neighborhood associations and business associations and the conversation that around the fair involvement of both of those organizations in land use matters. We would like to see more business associations involved in land use matters as the plan progresses on, and that's one of the things that we have a real serious concern about. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hills, members of council. My name is Mike Robinson. I'm here on behalf of Providence Health and Services Oregon. I submitted a letter to you dated January 7th of this year, so I'll limit my testimony to just a few things. First, I want to offer a compliment to your professional staff and to the public. This comprehensive plan, in my opinion, continues your tradition of having the best written and best edited planning documents in the state. It's easy to understand. We may not all agree with everything that's in it, but it's professionally drafted and it's a good document. It's easy to use, so I think it will serve the public well. I have two substantive things I'd like to tell you today. In our letter, Providence has suggested two additional plan policies in the campus institutional plan policy section. The first is new policy 6.61. That's a policy that would require the implementing land use regulations to provide for the continuation and extension of existing conditional use master plan for institutions. We appreciate the city recognizing the importance of institutions to the region's economy, and we appreciate the primary or the allowed use that the base zone would provide. But the reality is we have a real investment in our conditional use master plan. We've worked hard with our neighbors to see that it works and that it's neighborhood friendly. The proposed land use regulations unfortunately terminate existing and improved CUMPs early and don't provide for extension. We think it's important that there be a plan policy recognizing the investment that the neighbors and the institutions have made in the CUMPs. Secondly is new plan policy 6.62. Part of our plan, CUMP, has a very effective transportation demand management plan. Providence's, for instance, has resulted in a reduction of single occupancy vehicle travel each year since its implementation. We'd like this plan policy to be considered by the council so that the land use regulations and administrative rules to be adopted would provide for the continuation of successful and effective TDMs. And we thank you for your time today.
Help me out with this, just to understand how this would work. I need to go back and look at the campus institutional portion of the plan and what the policies would be, but the purpose of that was to enshrine and legalize the use of the uses like campus institutional uses that are there under these conditional use master plans. So in theory, I get it that we would adopt this in plan and in code, and you wouldn't need a conditional use master plan anymore. So what's the substantive difference of continuing and extending existing master plans versus having it, down in chapter and verse in the code? I just need to understand how that would work in practice differently.
Well, Mayor, Providence has two principal concerns, and of course this relates to Portland Providence Medical Center. We're fine with the concept of the CI2 zoning district that, as you say, enshrines the use. The issue is the CUMP terminates, and under administrative rules we haven't seen yet that are going to be promulgated by PBOT, we're going to have to do a new TDM. We don't know what's required in that. We don't know how extensive it's going to be. So we want to keep the CUMP in place. We have a good TDM that works now. It's working for the public, it's working for us, and we'd like to keep it in place through its vested period, which I think in this case is 2023, and be able to extend it. We appreciate, we're not saying don't adopt the plan map designation, don't adopt the zones, but we're happy with how we've been able to work with the CUMP, with the neighbors, and implement a successful TDM plan. without the ability to keep that in place, we're going to be forced at some point to do a different TDM. We'd be less concerned if we knew what that was going to be, but those rules haven't been adopted. By the time they get adopted, CUMP is going to be on its way out, and we're concerned about that. And I will tell you, I think your staff has been responsive to us on this. They've convened a meeting tomorrow with PBOT. We're going to go to that and listen, and we may have some additional comments. But that, Mayor, is, I'm not trying to make a simple issue complex, but it's intertwined with the TDM regs.
Yeah, no, that helps. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's a good explanation. Other questions?
Yeah, I know that neighbors have different but similar concerns the other way, particularly where there's going to be a new institutional residential zoning, and yet there isn't a master plan. And
Right.
so in that instance, what guides the rules? So I think we've heard a lot about not adopting the mixed-use zones until we know what the implementing rules are and what's going to be allowed. I hear a similar concern from many different sides on the institutional zoning.
That's correct. And may I offer one other quick thing?
Please, yeah.
We testify, and again, the PSC is a very interesting organization to testify in front of. They actually listen and engage you in discussion, which I think is what we all try and achieve. No one at that hearing on the 14th said they wanted the CUMPs to go away. All of the institutions that testified expressed support for them. And I think people would tell you they were tough to get done, but one of the values that I think Providence and I see, and I don't speak for myself, I speak for my client, it's actually forced us to engage our neighbors and do a better job of working with them. And I think there were a lot of early skirmishes, but I'm comfortable in saying that the relationship is much better. And if we hadn't had the instrument of the CUMP to help us do that, I'm not sure we would have gotten there.
Yeah, no, I've been through that process a time or two,
it's
and
fun,
I've seen
isn't it?
that effect. Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
You're
Thank you all.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay.
Next three are 74, 75, and 76. Deborah O'Neill, Soren Impey, and Joseph Weston. And they'll be followed by 78, Tamara DeRitter, 81, Vivian Satterfield Opal, and 83.
Tamara, you're
Rose
in the next wave, so.
Sorry.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Mayor Hales and members of the Portland City Council. My name is Deborah O'Neill, and I am speaking today on behalf of the Architectural Heritage Center and the Bosco Milligan Foundation. Other individuals have and will testify on behalf of the Architectural Heritage Center and the Foundation. The purpose of my testimony will be to highlight elements of the proposed comprehensive plan that are strongly supported by the Center and the Bosco Milligan Foundation. First, the Architectural Heritage Center and the Foundation support the proposed comprehensive plan's recommendation to downzone the Elliott Conservation District. This was specifically requested by the neighborhood, which looked to match zoning with Conservation District guidelines. Second, we also support the elimination of the no net loss housing policy, which has limited flexibility when neighborhood and/or area plans are updated. Given that existing zoning already supports substantially more residential capacity than is required by 2035, we believe that there should be flexibility in protecting our historic districts and in as yet undesignated historic areas. Finally, the Architectural Heritage Center and the Foundation also support the efforts of the Infill Design Task Force and emphasize the importance of its work, especially as it relates to lot confirmation issues. I thank you for your time and for this opportunity.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Welcome. Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Soren Impey, and I have rented in the Buckman neighborhood for 16 years. In fact, 80% of my neighbors rent. Nevertheless, Buckman and much of Portland is experiencing a housing crisis with record low vacancy rates and an epidemic of displacement of long-term residents. As a renter threatened by displacement myself, I strongly support upzoning of plots adjacent to centers and corridors in the Buckman area and the inner southeast as a whole. I also ask that you support changes that allow for greater low-rise density in exclusionary residential zoned areas. As the recent stabilization of rents in central Seattle illustrates, inclusionary upzoning is critical for increasing housing equity in this city. And I want to talk about a recent comprehensive study of 95 large metropolitan areas, which found that density restrictions increase economic segregation by promoting concentration of affluence. In fact, the authors conclude that density restrictions are a culprit in the social fragmentation of metropolitan areas and should be relaxed wherever possible. I urge the council to give more weight to housing equity and less weight to what I believe are often euphemism for economic self-interest, such as charm, historic, and character. I am also, and now I'm going to change hats, I'm also here as a board member of Bike Loud PDX and a founder of Livable Streets Action, two active transport advocacy organizations. And I'd like to thank the commissioners and mayor for approving the Vision Zero plan, the Neighborhood Greenway Report, and recently approving and starting to implement bike share. Nevertheless, Portland is falling well behind its bike plan goal of 25% mode share by 2030. Multiple projects in the comprehensive plan that we believe are essential to reaching these mode share goals have been pushed back. We urge you to push forward projects such as the Inner Sandy Boulevard, Hollywood Town Center, Belmont Morrison Bikeway, Inner Holgate Bikeway into the first decade. And we also urge you to prioritize the Inner Burnside PED bike improvements and the Inner Barber Corridor improvements. And many of these points have been made in a letter that I believe has been sent to the council and the mayor. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Joseph Weston, and we do own a considerable amount of property in Portland, but I'm going to limit my comments to 3 areas that I'm very concerned about. The first area is up at Sylvan. If you look at the packet that I gave you, there's a map here. When we developed these properties back in the 60s, they were referred to as woody walk-ups. And a woody walk-up is one that does not have an elevator and you have to walk up the stairs. The site is an ideal site for a Class A office complex. It's close to the city. It's right on light rail. It's an area that should be zoned, in my estimation, EG2. And I ask you to give that some consideration. We get calls all the time on that property. I will not redevelop. It'll be done after I'm long gone, but it should be redeveloped to its highest and best use. And its highest and best use would be a zone of EG2. The second area is the close-in Central East Side. We've acquired over the years the real estate owned by Jansen Knitting Mills, Nationwide Insurance, Portland Bottling, the Salvation Army, what they owned on the north side of Sandy, the remainder of Lyman Slack Motors, and Oregon Plaza Building. We have 175,000 square feet of land there. It was my intent when I assembled that to perhaps do another Hoyt Street property development known as the Pearl, but at my age, and I don't have the patience, I have to admit that now to you, that I probably will not be developing that. But it should be developed to its highest and best use. We're working with Washington Capital. They own some property in there, and we ask that that be brought into the city under Central City. It should be Central City zoning. It's the largest piece of property under private ownership in the Central City. It's close in, right in the Lloyd Center area. Please give it some consideration. And the third property is a property at the east end of the Broadway Bridge. You had a city commissioner, Eric. He approached me. He said, we would like to develop the east end of the Broadway Bridge. That's when they were doing one of many studies of the Memorial Coliseum. So I said, well, you go ahead and rezone it. We'll build something. There's a drawing in there, a rendering of a building we're going to build. I get a call from Eric. All of a sudden, he says, well, Sam Adams changed his mind. They want to do the Burnside Bridge at the east end of the Burnside Bridge. They're going to put in the Burnside Cooch Couplet. So don't waste any more time on your project there because we're not interested anymore. But that's now in Central City. I want to leave it in Central City. So your cooperation in amending it to get these zones on these 3 undeveloped or not developed to its highest and best use would be appreciative. We own property in almost all these areas other people have talked about. I'm not worrying about it. It's fully developed. Maybe it'll be a non-conforming use, but we'll be grandfathered in. And when I'm gone, somebody else can worry about it. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. We hope you're not gone anytime soon. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to go pick up my lottery money now.
Thank you, Joe.
The next 3 are 78 Tamara DeRitter, 81 Vivian Satterfield Opal, and 83, Rose Kowalski. And they'll be followed by 85 representatives from MISO, 86, Nikki Johnston, and 88, Wendy Chung.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Tamara DeRitter. I'm the chairman for Rose City Park Neighborhood Association, which I am representing today. There are three concerns. First, passenger vehicles may change to electric over the next 20 years, but they will not go away. And right now, the comprehensive plan predicts that 30% of all households in the city will reduce to one or no vehicles at all. So I don't think that's real. Also, number two, the public parking needs to be planned for and implemented in centers and civic corridors, or you will lose your small businesses. This issue is not just addressed at all. Number three, request the support of a provisional map amendment for Euclid Heights subdivision and for Northeast 60th Avenue Station area. So on behalf of our, number one, on behalf of our neighborhood association and Central Northeast neighbors, please remove or level the transportation use hierarchy contained in section 9.6. Right now, 9.6 identifies bicycles as second only to pedestrians and handicapped uses for all the uses on public roads. Bicycles are prioritized over transit, over freight, over carpools, over electric cars, and last but not least, passenger vehicles. This policy is cast the same for all the roads in Portland, not just downtown. Instead, create a best practices transportation as they do with science. And slide one. This is a new car, and it's an electric car, and they're making these, or looking to make these for the average citizen. So this is Frohmeyer's son, actually, invented this. So already, the language that you have in this plan is antiquated. Number two.
Go ahead quickly, because I have
Okay.
a question for you, so.
Okay, number two, public off-street parking needs to be planned and implemented for the centers and the civic corridors. I represent both our neighborhood and Central Northeast neighbors on this as well. I represent the neighborhood, both of these groups for in the centers and corridors parking task force. None of the staff in that committee or in the draft of the comprehensive plan have addressed a critical issue that mixed-use commercial will contain high-density residential units that require 72 parking spaces for each 100 units.
Got it. And what's your third one?
And the third one is the provisional map amendment that we have.
So do you have a new proposed map for us for that area?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good.
I'm not
That's all right.
sure.
You don't have to put it up on the screen, as long as you've got it in the record. I know you were
I
working.
have it in the record. It's in the handout that you've got in
Okay.
front of you.
Okay, I bet it is. As long as we've got that in the record, because I know you were working on this with the staff. So
Right.
I'm very
And
interested to see what you
creating a-
came up with. So,
Basically
okay.
creating a red carpet of commercial along 60th
Okay,
from Halsey down to the Mac Station.
okay, good. Thank you. And that
Thank
has
you.
the support of the neighborhood?
It does.
Okay.
And that's one of the things we're good for, is
Yeah,
neighborhood
yes, it is.
associations.
Oh, here it is. I've got it.
Hold this
Okay.
together.
Yeah, thank you very much for working more on that, because I know that that was one I was particularly interested in seeing some additional thought, and you have done it, so thank you.
Yeah, public involvement.
Appreciate it.
pending.
Thank
Okay.
you very much.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Hello, good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. Vivian Satterfield, representing Opal Environmental Justice Oregon, and this council is familiar with my organization and the scope of our work, and so just a slight reminder that, leadership and accountability for reducing risks and enhancing meaningful public engagement are needed at every level of government to develop solutions to environmental justice problems. Environmental and land use planning agencies at every level must integrate achieving environmental justice into their missions and make implementation a part of their core program activities. It's also important to remember that government at every level has not always been proactive in addressing environmental justice concerns, and citizen protest has been the catalyst that has prompted government action. And, in short, land use, access, housing, and transportation are all environmental justice issues and are reasons why Opal is a member of the Anti-Displacement PDX Coalition. There are policies in the current comp plan which do speak to environmental justice concerns, 2.4, 2.4A, and 2.4B. I do want to highlight, though, one particular site, 1639 Southeast Holgate. And my understanding is there's a current proposal of a change from designation from EG1 to CM2. My understanding, even though I'm not a planner, is that this is considered an upzone, and that up designations should deliver some public community benefits. Public agencies in particular have a responsibility to mitigate potential displacement, and for example, TriMet with the yellow line. I regret that Commissioner Fish is not here. I understand that he's presently brought up publicly that we should be getting more from the orange line since it's a huge public investment. So this TriMet site, which is over there again, 1639 Southeast Holgate, is near the orange line, and coincidentally, it's actually in a neighborhood that I was displaced from in 2011 as a renter due to increased rental rates that I really attribute to the orange line. And so, as I'm working with community members on Powell Division, this is something that we're looking and thinking about critically in terms of land banking and what sort of community benefits we can be looking at as we're planning for large-scale public investments on transit. So thank
This
you.
is the site that's actually owned by TriMet, right?
That's correct. And my understanding is that it's been given an upzoning, which essentially allows TriMet to do more with that land.
Well, yeah, and I guess the issue there in that corridor, and it's a little bit, it is a question in my mind about whether we try to preserve that area primarily for employment or whether we do allow housing to sort of come down the hill from Milwaukee Avenue closer to 17th. And, there's a couple of schools of thought on that, but one of which is we got to preserve all the employment land that we possibly can, and the other is we need more housing. But
absolutely need more housing.
But you say it would be better to be left at EG1 than to change it to CM2.
I don't know if I have a particular line of thought about how the designation should be. It's just an overall, when we're looking at sites like that, and when we're looking at sites in which another agency such as TriMet, is receiving some sort of additional benefit and upzoning, to really look critically at those specific sites at the intersection of housing and, transportation especially.
Okay, yeah, it's a public benefit question. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Rose Kowalski. I live at 627 Northwest 20th Avenue, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Bosco Milligan Foundation's Architectural Heritage Center. We appreciate the opportunity to bring our concerns to you this afternoon. We support the proposed downzoning in the Elliott neighborhood as a positive and important step, since such detailed review greatly increases the consistency of both zoning and development guidelines. We encourage you to continue this work in other conservation and historic districts. Specifically, we request additional downzoning of high-density areas in 3 existing historic districts, the Alphabet District, Irvington, and Kings Hill. We feel the very high FAR allowances in the RH zones do not support the heritage conservation goals of these adopted historic districts, and we request the Council include a refinement plan work element as part of the implementation phase of the comprehensive plan. Sadly, we need to note that Portland's historic resource inventory was completed more than 32 years ago and has never been updated. Portland's planning process is therefore unprepared to assess the historic importance of its very large stock of post-war and mid-century modern historic properties. By very large stock, I mean the hundreds of buildings constructed between 1934 and 1966, which became eligible after the completion of the 1984 inventory. We encourage Council to arrange for an update of this important resource. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Thank you all.
The next 3 are 85, MISO representative, 86, Nick Johnston, and 88, Wendy Chung. And they will be followed by 79, Marianne Schwab, 91, Karen Carlson, and 92, Rick Michelson.
Who would like to share?
Okay, just pull up another chair if you can find a loose one there, and we'll let these folks start while you get organized. Please, go ahead.
Okay, I'm Nikki Johnston with the Irvington Community Association. Irvington is outlined by the center lines of Northeast Broadway, excuse me, to Fremont, and Northeast 7th to 27th. City plan staffers admit that there is enough density in the present zoning for the next 50 years, so why the need to upzone areas in the Irvington Historic District? Also, because of the overzoning, it is entirely consistent with the comp plan to reduce the zoning in certain limited areas in the Irvington Historic District. The RH zoning in the Irvington Historic District, with its floor area ratio of 4.0, is incompatible with the fabric of the district, and that RH zoning, where currently found in Irvington, should be restricted to a floor area ratio of 2.0, or if north of Schuyler, the RH zoning should be reduced to R1. The maximum height of 75 feet along Broadway on the north side between 7th and 16th is not justified either by market needs nor by consistency with the compatibility with the historic development pattern, and should be adjusted downward in that stretch to match the 45-foot height currently established along the north side of Broadway between 16th and 27th. The CX zoning along the north side of Broadway between 7th and 16th is also not compatible with an historic district and should be changed to CM2, but without the benefit of bonuses. The bonuses are too much for an historic district. The changes affecting the historic district on the comp plan map are 24th and Fremont commercial node changed from CN2 to CM1. This is acceptable. 7th and Knott commercial node change from CN1 to CM1. This is acceptable. Half block east of 7th between Schuyler and Tillamook, and the full block between 7th and 8th, Schuyler to Hancock, change from EX to CM2. This is not acceptable, and the CM3 should be changed to CM1. Half block north of Broadway between 16th and 27th, change CS to CM2. This is acceptable if bonuses are not allowed. If bonuses
I'm gonna stop you, not because I want to stop you, but because I want to make sure we've got this in writing.
Okay.
Because it's so detailed. One, I'm not going to be able to remember it all. That's okay,
Sure.
as long as we've got copies of
We
it,
do.
because there are a number of members of this council who will walk out and will sit down with the map and look at it in detail with your testimony. So if you could make sure we've got a written copy of that in the
I will.
record, that would be extremely helpful.
I will, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last point is, there's a commercial node on 15th Brazee, which is non-conforming, and it's been there for years, and everybody has known about it. We don't want it changed at all, and just leave it as it is, and it is surrounded by residences.
It's R5 now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, make sure we've got a copy of that, please, because
Thank
that's
you.
very helpful that you're that specific for us. So thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Hales,
Yes.
Mayor Hales, here. Unfortunately, we've lost a quorum. Oh, no, we haven't.
No, we haven't. Sorry. Okay, thank you. Okay, who'd like to be next? Go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you for having us. My name is Tasonga Davis. I'm representing Micro Enterprise Services of Oregon. What we are requesting that the city include address 4008 Northeast Martin Luther King, 4009 Northeast Grand, and 4003 Northeast Grand in the comprehensive plan to change the zoning to EXD zone, central employment zoning. We would like these properties, their history of these properties have been commercial use, and they've been always used for commercial, but they're zone residential use.
Okay, got it.
And then,
Thank you. Please.
Thank you again for the extended opportunity. My name is Felicia, and I'm also representing MISO. I wanted to just say the building in which we are leasing has been always been commercial space. Since moving, we moved there in 2011, and it's in a parking lot. But we're becoming a staple in the community since we've been there, and we are serving many more people than we did when we were on Alberta and 28th. we served at least over 40% African Americans. And we just would like for you to really consider rezoning as a commercial space.
That's 4008 MLK and 4003 and 4009 Grand.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Wendy Chung, and I live in the Alphabet Historic District in Northwest Portland. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. You will note that you're receiving a packet that will supplement the testimony of the NWDA, as well as some testimony that I provided in writing last week. I also want to respond to the comment made by an earlier testifier about the use of the word historic to oppose density. And I just want to point out, I live in the most dense neighborhood in all of Portland, and we are most certainly not opposed to density. So I'd just like to point out that the comments here are indeed intended to support the preservation of historic districts, much along the lines of folks from Irvington, Elliott, Bosco Mulligan Foundation, the Architectural Heritage Foundation have testified previously, so I'll try not to repeat anything that's been said previously. In your packet, you'll see I've made specific comments to the comp plan language, but today I want to draw your attention to two specific suggestions for changes to zoning that will support Goal 5 of Oregon's statewide planning goals and guidelines, which requires local government to adopt programs that conserve historic and open space resources for present and future generations. First, as others have commented, the FAR needs to be changed in RH properties within the Alphabet Historic District, as well as other historic districts, from 4-to-1 to 2-to-1. And I'd like to encourage the transfer of air rights from historic properties to non-historic properties, but outside of the historic district. So in other words, in some instances, there's been, especially in our neighborhood where we have a lot of development, an attempt to transfer bonus rights onto properties within the historic district. So I would ask that you consider the possibility of prohibiting that kind of transfer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you all.
The next three are 79, Mary Ann Schwab, 91, Karen Carlson, and 92, Rick Michelson, and they'll be followed by 98, Ike Harris, 100, Rod Merrick, and 106, Bill Failing.
There's Mary Ann's coming up, so we got all three of you, so. Okay, Karen, why don't you go ahead?
Oh, okay. My name is Karen Carlson. I'm here representing the NWDA, Northwest District Association. A letter is about to be given to you that has testimony, detailed testimony from our planning committee and our transportation committees. But I'd like to just point out a few items that are in there. First is that the Northwest is called out in the comp plan as both an inner ring neighborhood and a town center. And after reading the descriptions of both, it's pretty clear that the town center most clearly defines our neighborhood, both its traditions and aspirations. And
Inner ring.
Inner ring, shoot. Thank you. So
to
we're
have friends
asking.
to correct you.
Okay, great. So we're asking to have the town center designation removed from Northwest. The other is something you heard a little bit earlier about campus institutional zoning designation. In Northwest, the Good Sam facility is actually very unique in nature, the way it's integrated and functions within a neighborhood. Both NWDA and Legacy agree that this designation should not be placed on the Good Sam facility. The institutional conditional use master plan serves the community and the institution well. And in fact, the new institutional zoning would actually down zone the campus. Right now, it's a 3.89 to 1 under the conditional use master plan. Institutional zoning would move it to 3.3 to 1 FAR. The last is outside the central city, all EX property, which is an employment zone designation, is being changed to a commercial mixed use. This does not actually recognize the reasons that some EX zoning has been placed in certain areas. Many inner ring neighborhoods, and particularly in the Northwest, have this designation to preserve this low-scale industrial and service uses that we have and coexist with the residential and commercial uses. These areas are already being eroded even through the EX zoning, and I've included a map, which I think is really enlightening. All of that is in green, is employment. This is what we call our eastern edge. The properties identified in red are new mixed use, high density mixed use. The intent is that all of the area that you're seeing would be rezoned to CM3. We think this is not a good idea. It'll cost jobs and it'll take away from our neighborhood what we think is a really wonderful patchwork of mixed use, commercial, housing, and employment. Thank you.
Quick question. It's always dangerous for policymakers to think out loud in public hearings, but we've heard a couple of criticisms of the new institutional zone. If we were to create a mechanism by which existing conditional use master plans lived on, would that ameliorate your concern? I mean, granted, at some point, the new rules would kick in at the expiration of that original conditional use master plan, but they've all got expiration dates. So what do you think of that notion?
Well, I think in Northwest we have more issues than the conditional use master plan. One of the things about the institutional designation is that it locks in the boundaries of what that institution is. The Good Sam one is a little convoluted, and it was designed basically in the 1980s to protect as much housing as possible, but it's also created some little pockets that are going to be hard to really redevelop for the hospital, and it may be viable for us to say do some swapping of land but if it's in the comp plan, then it has to be a comp plan amendment. I don't think that's really beneficial. One of the things we've been thinking about in Northwest is actually adding a sub-district to our plan district. That would be the Good Samaritan campus. And in doing that, we'd be able to kind of combine some of the things that institutional zoning is trying to accomplish, but also some of the things that have been long negotiated under our conditional use master plan that we're all happy with, we're all satisfied with. So that may be our solution then, to try to continue a conditional use master plan.
That's helpful, thank you. Mary Ann, if you don't mind, we're just going to stay in Northwest for a little while and then come back to.
Actually not.
Maybe not.
Rick Michelson, I'm actually here probably for the first time to talk about a particular piece of property I own. I own property on North Williams between Ivy and Fremont.
Not Northwest.
The comp plan is proposing to rezone from RXD to RH. I oppose that rezone. I've met with the Neighborhood Association and the Northeast Coalition of Neighborhoods, both of whom would prefer to see that site remained RX rather than transferring to RH, and for a variety of reasons. One is RH does not allow any ground floor retail in that space. That would be the last piece of that block without ground floor retail. The Elliott Neighborhood Plan has long called for that to have retail. Secondly, the height limit in the RH zone is 75 feet. Under the present RX zone and the agreement that was reached with you for the rezoning, portions of the site are limited to 65 feet and others are listed to 40 feet, which are the height limits we want to do rather than having the 75-foot height limit. And thirdly, under the present situation, projects would have to go through design review. If this project were changed to RH, design review would not be required for the project, which we all think is a step in the wrong direction. I think we're caught in one of those transition areas where I know the city staff has tried to move the RX zone into only the central city. But I think there are a few locations where maybe that's a mistake, and it would be better to keep what's been agreed to today for the betterment of the neighborhood and the city. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Mary Ann, please.
Good evening. Two guesses whose computer crashed to this afternoon, so I will give you my documentations at the end of this. I have them all over here. I'm here to go through some oopses with goal number 1. When you have a coalition office, we have 7 of them, and they write city council regarding something that's really beneficial to those communities, and we wait 7 months to get a response, that's not nice. And one I'll address is the street fees. We asked for information, we filed a public request, waited 53 days, and then we as citizens were asked to pay a $2,500 fine to get the information. This is happening anytime there's a blooper with a conditional use. Now, she just mentioned the institutional zones. Once you get them in there, I've read your document here, 148 pages. There's loopholes in here that's not written very clear. And I'm really happy to see that I've read the 15 hospitals and colleges. I support that. But I also respect her right to say, wait a minute, this is my neighborhood. And you really need to hear the people that live in those areas. Sunnyside has been asking and lobbying for a recreational center now for almost 35, if not 40 years. The school closed in 1980. Sarah King came in and said, oh, I didn't know I had to go to Buckman and address this. She submitted a letter at 4 o'clock Friday, March 13th, asking to rezone that 1.31 acres zoned RH open space to CM3. And to the credit of your staff working in the planning, they said absolutely no spot industrial zoning. But why is it we have to wait so long to get our pool? And I'm at the jumping off point, and I'm not so sure I'm going to be able to jump in it. I really supported the bond to fix our parks. And I support what Amanda is trying to do. But every time she moves 2 inches, she gets back to back. And I feel I've been backhanded on some of this stuff too. The letter from Southeast Uplift has asked that you consider buying this land. You had that surplus money. And I want to throw one more thing out here for your bureaus not talking to each other. I just found out about a design committee that came into St. Francis Apartments, 106 units. Of the 106, only 11 are deeply subsidized. And why is it when Dan Salzman says we need 600 to 800 low-income housing, 100 of them are plopped in our neighborhood? And how is it the design committee could make them upgrade the skin on that building, make smaller windows? Again, one brave person said no, did not vote on that. And now we've lost 32 to 34 on-site parking spaces. Where do we as citizens challenge this without having to pay these hellacious fees? I'm angry. The comp plan, all the work that Afifa did reads well on paper, but there's no enforcement. And if I found a little testy, I
Okay.
want to jump in that pool.
All right, well, make sure you leave us your information, and I think we might also keep the record open a little bit longer if people need.
That was my last statement.
Yes.
Please keep this open so that other people that are just now figuring out what happened. I was here for the Portland plan with 7 citizens. Missing in that document was the school property and the public involvement piece.
Okay.
I can name those 7 people, and here I am today, 7 years later, we haven't moved an inch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next 3 are 98, Ike Harris, 100, Rod Merrick, and 106, Bill Failing. And they'll be followed by 107, Tom Karwacki, 113, Nick Rossi, and 114, Rudy Cadlub.
Good afternoon. Welcome. I think you're on first, Mr. Harris.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hales and City Council. My name is Ike Harris, 39-year resident of Northeast Portland, a member of the Concordia Neighborhood Association Board. I'm here today to present gentrification from a pastoral point of view. Let's view gentrification from a cultural, political, historical, economical context. First, historical. What makes Oregon unique negatively is that the black population is only 2%. When Oregon was granted to statehood in 1859, it was the only state in the Union admitted with a constitution that forbade black people from living, working, or owning property here. Wallace Cafe, the Post, Kaiser Shipyard era, Vanport, black laws, exclusionary laws, and York, a slave that worked with Lewis and Clark, an Afro-American. After the expedition was over, he received 6 mules and a wagon, and everyone else got 325 acres of land. The parallel with Oregon past and Oregon present are draconian, to say the least. After Socrates read Draco's laws, he stated that this came from a sick person. Gentrification is economic Darwinism because it produces the survival of the fittest, which robs Afro-Americans from leaving the most copies of itself in successive generations. Gentrification is also the Geek-Schaltens enforced by Adolf Hitler, which produced the enforcement and standardization and elimination of all opposition within the political, economical, cultural, and historical Afro-American influence from the state, and Northeast Portland in particular. Solutions: institute new bold policies from the legislative body in Salem and the Oregon Supreme Court that favor strengthening Afro-Americans in the economic and housing sectors so that the testimony from the state of Oregon will fulfill the U.S. Constitution of self-determination, Dr. King's dream of equality, and the words of Almighty God, who made, of one nation, of one blood, God made all nations of men to dwell on all the face of the earth, and has determined the times before appointed and the boundaries of their habitation.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I'm Rod Merrick, Eastmoreland Land Use Co-Chair, and I have 2 slides.
Okay.
We're queuing up.
It takes a village to operate our AV system.
I didn't give her enough warning, but we have 2 slides, and I wanted to highlight, I mean, we've given extensive testimony, but I wanted to highlight a couple of issues of things that I think need to be addressed in this plan before it's finalized. And in many ways, there are a lot of wonderful things in it, but there are a couple of areas that really do need attention. And yes, that's good. Assume that you guys have as well. We need to come up with a better definition of what contextual design is about. The second item is Chapter 10, the land use designations. The paragraph referring to alternative development options should be removed from the plan because it locks in many of the worst aspects of the residential code as policy. Others have testified that these specific code sections not be included in the plan, but I don't think I have a problem with that, but I do have some problems with talking specifically about particular areas of the zoning code, which in fact are under consideration for reform. The third item is a recommitting to complete neighborhoods based on planning that involves the integral role of the neighborhood associations and business associations in the process, because community engagement processes are not being respected, as you've heard from the coalition leaders, and the neighborhood associations are all but ignored in the plan as integral to that planning process. And finally, I'd just like to say something about preservation. The missing theme of preserving what we love and improving what is neglected and unloved needs to be given more emphasis. The second, see if I can get this to go to the second, what do I do to make it go to the second slide? The second slide is very specific to our neighborhoods, repeated requests to be zoned R7. And I just want to give you kind of a quick picture of what R7 means and where the numbers fall out in our neighborhood. Remind everybody, R7 allows lot sizes from a minimum of 4,200 to 12,000 to a maximum of 12,000 square feet. The chart here shows what different quadrants of our neighborhood average lot sizes are. And as you can see, they're all well over 4,200 square feet. And they are very much in this range. And this is the appropriate, R7 is the appropriate designation for this neighborhood. And the fact that the lot sizes have varied significantly from the basic density standards is the trigger that has caused a lot of problems and needs to be addressed. And we're asking that our area B be given the R7 designation.
Thank you. I know you've submitted written testimony, but Carla, would you make sure that we get copies of those slides since they're in the record as well? Because that's handy reference for us based on your testimony.
Well, and I'll provide some additional supplemental testimony. We have given many pages of testimony previously, and we'll provide this as well.
And I mentioned this to Ms. Schwab earlier, but it's my intention to leave the written record open until close of business on Friday.
Okay.
So people can get additional information into the record if they haven't gotten it in today. So thanks to her computer problem and just logistics in general, we want to make sure that everything gets in. So
Thank you very much.
okay, thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hales, fellow commissioners. I'm Bill Failing. I'm here to address the potential property change, number 1128, formerly number 644, a threat to the status of Strohecker's store property, and to provide an overview of this immediate area as one who's been familiar with this combination of grocery and adjoining park, joined at the hip, and I've experienced this for about 70 years, betraying my age. The neighborhood interaction in this park and the store has been a cultural definition of the area. Generations learned tennis, basketball, baseball, all kinds of organized sports, and me included, for almost, for generations. And after that the sports would happen, we'd all go over to Strohecker's, and we would, which has been in business since 1904, and have a soda pop, later transitionalized to a beer. But it was a social hub, and now it's got coffee and it's got people collecting there as a kind of a social crossroads, a meeting place. There's more about this than just being a grocery store, which, by the way, is going out of business January 31st. It's part of a neighborhood culture and character that has not been erupted in my lifetime, nor in my family's preceding me. I'm asking the council today to not allow a change of this property's zoning, which has protected this property by comprehensive plan ordinance since 1984. Another grocery operator will surely fill this about to be empty space, just as it has in the past. I worry about how the new property owner, who lives in Southern California and who can only be interested in the property's ROI, can possibly understand the importance of neighborhood that exists in this area. In neighborhood, I'll say it again for emphasis.
Wrap up, Bill. I think we got the point about Strohecker's. But
All right, good. Anyway, I've got 250 names of people who have signed this, names and addresses, who have asked that this be represented, and I'm here to make sure it's done. And
Mr. Failing, what's it proposed to be rezoned to?
it's preserving, the zoning right now, Commissioner, is that the present zoning is supposed to protect and keep anything else beyond a grocery from occurring, but it can be changed very easily.
it's got a conditional use now, is that right?
Well, this goes back to 1984, Mayor, and.
Okay, we'll look into it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
No, we get it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
The next three are 107, Tom Karwacki, 113 and 114, Nick Rossi and Rudy Cadlub. And they will be followed by 67, Emily Geis, 118, Stephen Keller, and 119, Alan Redwick.
Go ahead, Tom.
Good evening. My name is Tom Karwacki, Vice Chair of the University Park Neighborhood Association, and we have several other members of the board here. So we came and we request that you consider the following things. First of all, we really agree with all of the comments dealing with neighborhood associations and suggest you add a policy number 6.8 dealing with neighborhood associations with respect to the planning and the comp plan, just like business districts. Our main issues are, number one, we don't like the institutional campus zone, which is our number 4 in my written statement. And we weakly support the idea of it becoming an SE2. for the Baxter McCormick property, but in general, we're opposed to the campus institutional zone, prefer the CUMP process, and it was a very important process for us. We had over 700 people within our neighborhood get involved in that process, far more than you have, Ed, actually, in this. So it's quite a bit. The Water Bureau is the main property that is concerned. We tried to make comments on using the MAP app, and they didn't accept them. So dealing with the idea of open space for what was in the Water Bureau land on the Cary Boulevard, and this Mid-Peninsula Trail, we would ask that the main classification of R5, which is the current one, be maintained rather than going to R2. And suggest that you consider a policy 8.93 dealing with recreational trails to have a 50-foot setback on new trails. And we're willing to pay $1,000 to help the city and create a stakeholder master plan for the Water Bureau land where everybody can live with whatever is decided. So we'd like to start working with the city on that. You heard about the issues we've had with south of Willamette Boulevard before. And our main issues besides that would be that we would consider that you consider affordable housing impact statements as a policy, perhaps 5.45. Dan, for your, this is a very useful thing. New Orleans, Atlanta, San Diego are all using these impact statements as a way of mechanism of implementing affordable housing and the policies that are in this document.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Good afternoon. Welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm Joe Rossi. I'm representing 3 families that are farm families in the Park Rose area. It's the Justo family, the Gary family, and the Rossi family. We're multi-generational 4- and 5-generation family farm in Northeast Portland. We have a unique 22 continuous acre site within this comp plan that has some zoning on it that I want to address. I talked to the families, and I really studied the 2035 plan, and I want to say that we're all very enthusiastic supporters of their goals, mostly because of the number 1 goal of creating complete communities. We're in the bullseye center of Park Rose. If you look on the map, we have Park Rose High School in the left corner, U.S. Post Office. We swing around to Beach Park and Shaver School. I just want to say thank you. Our community is very excited about our new park, and they touch our properties. We have R7 and 3, and we swing around to Park Rose Middle School. It's an exciting site because it has the potential for a complete walking and biking community. We have K through 12 schools. We have, what we're missing though is some very key pieces to make it a complete community. We're obviously missing neighborhood grocery, neighborhood supporting businesses, and appropriate densities to support all that. It's also exciting that we have north-south, east-west transit, and we're one of the entryways to the corridor. We engaged Rudy Catlub here of Costa Pacific to help us to meet the goals of the comp plan and specifically creating a complete community for our Park Rose.
Thank you. Welcome.
Mr. Mayor, Commissioners, I'm Rudy Catlub of Costa Pacific Communities. Over the last couple of decades, we've been involved with master planning, developing 2 major master plan communities, Renko Station in Hillsborough and currently Villebois in Wilsonville. And we're just delighted to be able to team up with the Rossi family on this site and apply what we've learned over the years in creating complete communities. This is a classic potential infill site here. We have thousands of jobs to the north of Airport Way, which is void of housing now. By increasing the density in the housing in this area, we ostensibly will reduce vehicle miles traveled in the region. Many of those people who travel many miles to get to Airport Way could live close by. We are I'm a little concerned about, if you look at the three maps, if you would go to the the third map, which is the latest proposed zoning, you'll see that there's R3 to the east, and then a mixed-use civic corridor along 122nd. And in between is an EG zone, an employment zone. We feel that that is strategically at a place in this area. It would become a dead zone in the community if it was just an office park or industrial. It's inappropriate being close to the schools, and the return on investment we can get by increasing the number of housing units in the area, housing that is more affordable than what R5 or R7 would be, and would provide enough rooftops, hopefully, to support a grocery on the on the west side of 122nd. 122nd on the west is the going home side for all those Airport Way people, be the best spot to do a local grocery. And so to that end, we are requesting that we not have the EG zone, that we expand the R3 and the mixed-use civic corridor zone on the east, and expand the mixed-use civic corridor zone to the west. That zone will allow us to get a palette, if you will, that will allow us to do a creative, integrated, diverse neighborhood of mixed-use retail, variety of residential types, and service retail as well.
Couple of questions. In fact, I was meeting earlier today with both the planning and the transportation staff about future street plans for large areas where redevelopment would occur. I assume that you're still at the notional stages of how this might get redeveloped or developed, because it's been agricultural land in much of this area for a long time. There would be some requirement for it, if it was mixed-use density, for some kind of grid of streets to marry into the neighborhood grid around it. I assume your plans incorporate that sort of planning 101 notion.
Well, you're familiar with the projects we've done in the past. They're all grids, not necessarily east-west grids, because they follow the topography, but no dead-end streets. Most of the products are alley-loaded, rear-loaded products.
And then the site that's shown in light yellow between the middle school and your property, that's not in your ownership or in these families' ownerships, right?
Yeah, I think that's a mistake on the map. That's actually Park Rose Middle School property.
So that's, okay, that's school district property,
Correct.
part of the middle school campus.
That's correct, yeah.
So there's no other property owner between your property and the school district's property?
That's correct, yeah. We border the school district property. And back to your question is yes, connecting walking paths and biking paths on the whole site, not creating rectangles of disjointed development.
Okay. Questions? Thank you all. Thanks very much.
I have a question. I'm wondering about having all of it zoned R3 rather than some of it R7, like some of the surrounding areas, for more of a mixed income neighborhood. Did you consider that?
I would like to address that, and maybe you want to say something, but we have a big ocean of R7 in all directions around us. There's really no R3 except for on the north side. There's some R3 touching us. So to get the appropriate mix of housing, I really think we need some higher density, which means some people don't want to mow their yards and, maybe, anyways, to get the diversity of product, I think we need R3 because we have so much R7 in all directions now.
And did you think about other zones such as R2.5?
I think having the mixed-use commercial corridor gives us the flexibility of some denser housing, so I'm assuming that we can incorporate some density in that. We're open to that, of course. We just don't want to ask for too much because presently a lot of that R3 is R3, and I think it gives us the flexibility. But if we really do some studies, that might be the more appropriate density. You're right.
I think it's obviously going to be a lovely development, and I think you may be one of the few people who has been at every single one of these comp plan hearings, so I really appreciate your diligence in following the process. I think it would be very fun to be a planner looking at that property and figuring out how to make a nice mixed development with a mix of home ownership opportunities as well as rentals and yards on your beautiful agricultural land. It makes me a little sad to think of so much of the land being covered with housing, considering how fertile it's been over the last century and more. So that was the thrust of my question is there some opportunity to leave some open space and some space for gardening?
Well, we do have a lot of open space adjacent to parks and the schools surrounding it, so.
I know, but you can't plant stuff on my park or on city parks.
But we'll figure out a way to do a community garden area there. I think that would be appropriate. The Rossies are committed to doing a legacy project there, and I suspect that it will have some type of farm theme throughout, so we're excited about it. We've done some initial studies that our gay area is one of the lowest median family income, and housing price is in the whole city. And frankly, the cost of, as some would want R5 or R7, the cost of developing 5,000 and 7,000 foot lots and the housing that would go on it, the median family income in that area simply wouldn't support that.
Yeah, I was thinking something more like Fairview Village, where there's some dense townhouses, there's a mixture of all kinds of different stuff.
Right,
So
exactly.
I'm not all that familiar with the R3 zone as to how flexible that is, but I want to make sure that you have a designation that allows you to do something innovative and really
Right.
the one word work.
We think that after meeting with the planning staff, we think that the mixed civic corridor will give us the flexibility to do a variety of housing types.
Thank you.
That's a great opportunity.
Thank you.
Not very many sites this size in the city, so, thank you very much. Okay,
Next three are 67 Emily Geis, 118 Stephen Keller, and 119 Alan Redwick. And they'll be followed by 120 Mark Bello and 121 Brian Postwitz. And then the new list, number 1 Brad Perkins.
good afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Emily Geis, and I'm one of the co-chairs of Bike Loud PDX. And so in that capacity, I wanted to say that we support the comp plan overall, but of course, we would still like to see a bit more bicycle infrastructure projects included so that it's closer to what's in the 2030 bike plan. We have emailed a letter with more detail about what we would specifically like to see. And then just as a personal citizen, I just wanted to say I'm a huge fan of smart infill development, especially the kind that allows for green space preservation, like duplexes, fourplexes, and ADUs. And I currently live in a 7-plex myself, and I'd love to see more smaller apartment like that in more residential neighborhoods with multifamily zoning in more what is now currently single family. I think this will help our city grow more responsibly without sacrificing walkability and bikeability. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thanks very much. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Alan Rudwick, the Land Use Chair for the Elliott Neighborhood Association. I want to talk about a big void in the middle of our neighborhood. That's currently a bunch of land that's owned by Legacy Emmanuel Hospital, which, by the way, is a great hospital, and I've nothing against the hospital. But they also have several blocks of structured parking, some surface parking, and some just completely empty land, even enough to put a big community garden on. Their land, hopefully you're familiar with the site, but all of the hospital is west of Vancouver Avenue, and the lots that, there's 1/2 block east of Vancouver that has been developed. Although according to their new campus manager, that is essentially a teardown. So we would like to get the lots to the east of Vancouver, between Vancouver and Williams, developed into a high-density mixed-use zone. We think that's appropriate, given that the Williams corridor has been growing quickly, and this is kind of a missing link. South of Russell Street, there's pretty big development and a couple more developments being proposed. And north of the hospital's property, there are a number of large developments, current and under construction, and being proposed as well. The intersection of Russell and Williams was formerly the heart of this community, although I was not here at that time. But it's kind of the logical center to have on two main corridors to have a big space that's away from single-family homes. It's a good space in the neighborhood to increase density, which I know you guys, that was one of the goals of this plan. So we'd like to not only see the zoning changed on this property, but also we'd like to see the city actively try to get this property developed, whether through a community development corporation or some other mechanism. It's basically a land bank for the hospital, and it's been 40 years. The city helped them get this land, by the way.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Next three are 120 Mark Bello, 121 Brian Postwitz, and then from the new list for today, number 1 Brad Perkins, and they'll be followed by 2, 3, and 4 Blythe Olson, Adam Herstein, and Roger Jones.
Okay. How many do you have on the new list total? Okay, great. Mark, please.
Good afternoon. Let me personally say this is quite poetic, being about the last to testify. As in 1980, I was one of your first employees to actually introduce the 1980 comp plan. I'm here representing the Urban Forestry Commission, and we thank you very much for allowing our commission to come to you in support of several crucial policies. We are very supportive of policies that are in 3 chapters that I think testify to the positive impact of trees and the importance of our urban canopy. They are in chapters 3, Urban Form, chapter 7, Environment and Watershed Health, and 8, Public Facilities. You should have a copy of the revised sheet.
Yes, we will.
And this is to make it very simple. I'll keep it very short. That the urban forest policies were very supportive. We've suggested some language changes to strengthen them, to make them more directive. Chapter 3, since trees do play a significant role in making Portland's future growth positive for residents, we also suggest that we talk about large form trees rather than the more vague current proposed language such as extensive tree plantings or prominent trees. This is a very exciting time for forestry. The management plan is kicking in. Title 11 is off to a successful start, and we've been able to do some research. One of the key things that we've learned, David Diaz on the Urban Forestry Commission has been able to determine that Douglas firs, which are large form, have, for example, almost a 5-fold positive benefit to the city. The trees are worth $4.9 billion if you were to replant them, if you could order them up. And actually, in terms of what they do for stormwater control, carbon sequestration, and air pollution removal, that's $40 million per year. So if you want more bang for your buck, plant larger trees. Finally, we'd like to urge that you not change, that you support policy 8.41, which is trees and rights of way. The logic behind that is that we are going to lose land to private development. We will retain our rights of way and the widths of our rights of way, and through creative design, we can actually support canopy goals and support transportation functions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Afternoon.
Good afternoon. My name is Brian Pozowitz. Thank you for the chance to testify. I live in the Selwood neighborhood. In particular, I live about 4 blocks south of the New Seasons Market that's on Tacoma Street there. I've owned a house in Selwood since 1996. In the time I've been there, I've seen a lot of change. I've seen a lot of things torn down. I've seen houses torn down. I've seen industrial buildings torn down. And I've seen those things replaced by a lot of different things, by apartments, by townhouses, by skinny houses, and by things people would call monster houses. I've seen the changes result in more density and in taller buildings, and some of this has happened very, very close to me. All of this has significantly changed the character of my neighborhood, and there's a lot of pros and cons with all of these changes, but in general, I have to say that all of these changes have made my neighborhood a nicer neighborhood to be in. So I wanted to just come down here and support what I understand to be a couple of general principles of the comprehensive plan, the recommended draft. One is the principle of a compact urban form. both through more height and more density. And the other is the principle of concentrating development around centers and corridors. I support these general concepts both for environmental reasons, because I think it results in less driving and less sprawl, and also just for aesthetic reasons, because I think they produce more interesting and vibrant neighborhoods. So I support these changes, and I think in exchange for these benefits that we should be willing to accept some changes to the existing character of neighborhoods. In fact, I think it's a little unreasonable to think in a growing urban area that your neighborhood is not going to change over time. I think it has to. And I've got 10 seconds just to get down in the weeds with you a little bit. I'm generally pretty happy with the changes proposed for my neighborhood. The two exceptions, I think the down zoning in Northwest Moreland is a little too aggressive. And on 13th Avenue south of Tacoma, I think the mixed-use zone should go to the end of the street and not stop at Sherritt. Traditionally, it's been a mixed-use area in that part of town.
End of the street meaning city limits, or?
13th goes, well, I think 13th basically ends on the southern end at Garthwick.
Yeah.
And all the way down at that southern end, there's been industrial buildings, there's been retail shops, and for some reason, the mixed-use stops at Sherritt, and it's residential only after that. And I actually live very close to there. So.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And the Springwater corridor is about to be continuous right there, so.
Exactly.
There'll be more pedestrian and bicycle activity soon.
Exactly.
Thank you,
We're all
Parks
looking forward
Bureau
to it.
and Peabody, so.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. Brad, welcome.
Hi, thank you for hearing us today. The Northeast Business
What's
Association.
your name in the record, Brad? I'm sorry,
Oh,
I
okay.
missed you up there.
I'm Brad Perkins. I'm Land Use Chair of the Northeast Business Association. The Northeast Business Association believes it is long overdue for Emmanuel Hospital to follow through with its signed promise it made in March 1971 with the City of Portland and community, which was called the Replacement Housing Agreement. NEBA encourages the Portland City Council to begin the process by rezoning Emmanuel's 3 vacant blocks on North Vancouver from IR to M3 zone. Our goal is to heal past wrongs by reviving the once thriving African-American district by creating a center for a diverse population and uses such as retail, housing, and a medical vocational school. On February 28, 1967, Emmanuel Hospital announced its 4-phase plan for removal and development of 22 blocks of nearby properties. On May 30th, 1970, PDC announced receiving $5 million from the federal government to acquire 209 households for Emmanuel. The threat of this eminent domain powers were illegally used for private benefit to force some unwilling landowners to sell. This process of displacing families, eliminating jobs, and demolishing historic properties tore the heart out of the once prominent Black community. A decade of planning by Emmanuel Hospital and PDC occurred before the first public hearing was held on July 29, 1970. Emmanuel Displacement Persons Association, EDPA, formed soon after, but it was too late to stop Emmanuel's and PDC's plans. The hospital project moved forward after EDPA, Emmanuel Hospital, HAP, and PDC signed an agreement of the Replacement Housing Agreement, March 1971. The IR zone classification of these 3 blocks has caused a greater blight to North Portland community than it was before demolition of the popular historic district. No jobs, property taxes, or housing has occurred in these 3 blocks for 42 years. Emmanuel Hospital has no interest in developing housing or hospital-related uses in the near future on these blocks. In closing, the Portland City Council, besides rezoning these 3 blocks, should also help create development corporation involving the community, legacy, and PDC to plan and develop the 300 housing units and other community-based uses.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
You're going to put that letter in the record too, please?
Yes,
Thank you.
I do have a record.
Good, thank you. Thank you all.
The next 3 are Blythe Olson, Adam Herstein, and Roger Jones. And they'll be followed by number 6, 7, and 8, Veronica Bernier, Janet Freeman, and Andrew Paddock.
Go ahead.
My name is Blythe Olson, and I have lived in southwest Portland near,
Oops, don't take that personally.
try not to, near Strohekers Market for almost 25 years. I don't want to repeat what Bill Failing already said, and I'll make this very short, but I want to perhaps clarify the neighbors' concerns, the neighborhood's concerns. We have over 200, I think 200 and almost 40 people who have signed on to the comments that I wrote and have submitted in writing before, but more people kept adding their names, so I'll submit the entire list tonight. To clarify, the change in the comp plan for that property is just a name change, I think from neighborhood commercial to CM1, I believe it is. And we've been told by the Planning Commission that those will be considered comparable in terms of the 1984 ordinance that restricts use of that property. The city attorney's office has reviewed that and said those would be considered comparable, then the ordinance will remain in force. This is what we want and what we need in order to have a voice, in order for the neighbors who live all around that area to have a voice in what happens to that property and what the new owner, the developer from California who bought it, may try to do with the property. The only way we feel we'll have a voice is if that ordinance remains intact, and we've been told maybe a few words will be tweaked in months to come to make sure that those zones are comparable so that will be the case. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Olson, I just wanted to thank you for not sending us 240 emails, but rather collecting your petition and sending it in one go. That's really helpful. Thank
Well,
you.
you're quite welcome. Some people did also send in individual.
Not 240, I
No.
promise you. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, others that are still on the list?
Veronica Bernier, Janet Freeman, Andrew Paddock.
Come on up.
Yes, come on
Yes,
up.
please. Anyone else
Douglas
plans
Young.
to speak? Okay,
Alan Kessler.
he's here. Why don't you go ahead? Thank you.
Thanks for having me at short notice. My name is Janet Freeman, and I'm happy to own a beautiful house on Northeast 28th Avenue between Everett and Davis in the Kearns neighborhood. That house is not zoned mixed use. There's a little pocket between Everett and Davis on Northeast 28th that is zoned R1, and we're sandwiched in with mixed use. We have the Coca-Cola syrup plant right kitty corner across the street, and Staccato Gelato, Bishop's Barbershop, Tavla Restaurant, and that whole little pocket is zoned residential. And I have submitted testimony via email to this fact. I've been working with Marty Stockton. She's helped me, and the Kearns Neighborhood Association has written a letter on the property's behalf that that little pocket be rezoned as mixed use because it's becoming engulfed in development, which I think is as it should be because it's such a great area. So I'm here just to point out that oversight. I looked at the comprehensive plan map, and it's still all showing R1, and so there are a lot of non-conforming businesses there now. So I just thought I'd come down and say, hey, it's a great area, and if we could have mixed use, people could make the best use of the properties.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Welcome. Yep, go ahead. Whoever would like me next.
Sure. My name is Alan Kessler. Three quick points. The first one is thank you for the policy that seems to be adding density throughout the city. In the corridors, the fact that you're adding density, all the benefits that have been talked about before, walkability, affordability, the environmental impact. For all those reasons, we should be embracing the growth and putting it there. I live in the Richmond neighborhood. I happen to be a member of the Richmond Neighborhood Association Board, although I'm not speaking for them tonight. And I have seen the pushback that you can get on this, and I appreciate Commissioner Novak's comments, and I'd like you to stand firm on doing the right thing in those regards. You may have seen some letters come in supporting a little personal campaign of mine to try to remove civic corridor designation and replace that with mixed-use urban center, at least on Powell, but probably throughout the city. Oregon Department of Transportation has not adopted Vision Zero. They engineer their roads to burn human lives in exchange for mobility. It's just decided as an engineering problem that some death is okay. We don't want freeways in our cities. I think by switching to mixed-use urban center, where we're putting civic corridor, we send a strong message to ODOT that PBOT plans to take these over, and we want to build them out like neighborhoods, not like freeways. The last issue, not to pick too much on the mayor, but you can take it, I think, is your neighborhood of Eastmoreland. Just as an example, 1.5% African-American population. If you look at what you're proposing to do in Eastmoreland, is just as beige as your neighbors. There are almost no changes. There was a great article, a great publication from the Journal of the American Planning Association in this issue that emphasizes that low-density zoning leads to segmentation of wealth, especially creating pockets of wealth like your neighborhood is. And I don't think that's okay. I think that in order to add some diversity to your neighborhood, we need to add some color to the map. And not doing that there and in Richmond and all the other neighborhoods is unacceptable.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Welcome.
Hello, my name is Andrew Paddock. I live in Buckman. It is often said that a beast can be brought down by 1,000 small cuts, and I'd like to propose a similar thing with regards to transportation. Namely, I'd like to advocate increased spread of sidewalks throughout the city and pedestrian connections. Lots of little projects, and in many cases, it's a lot of very small ones that I think would make a very big difference in terms of mobility throughout the city. And maybe a more intelligent allocation of where those are built. In my neighborhood, we've had several of the curbs rebuilt, and they've been very nice, but they've also been unnecessary, while other parts of the city have gone without sidewalks completely. So that is one point I would like to make, is a more intelligent reallocation of the resources. And secondly, with regards to planning for future transportation, I would like to advocate a bit of caution in remembering that new technologies that are being proposed, everything from driverless cars, small pods, things like that, are future unproven technologies that are not adopted, especially the driverless car, anywhere in the world in actual commercial practice. And perhaps we shouldn't put our eggs in a basket that has not yet been proven. What the future holds, we'll see then, but I would advise against planning for it in the present. And it, of course, does nothing to counteract automobile reliance, and especially for households who either cannot drive for economic reasons, health reasons, or for people like myself who are temperamentally unsuited for driving. And there's one final thing I'd like to point out, and this is the one big dream I would like to see, and this is in regards in particular to the MAX system throughout the city. I would like to see future investment going towards improving what we have presently, not to put down future expansion, but I would like to see things like prioritization in downtown of the lights so it can move through more quickly, things like double tracking parts of the red line, and maybe rebuilding Gateway Station along the lines that the Rose Quarter is, how the yellow line splits off. That would allow a two-track connection and a much faster progression. It is a system that is notoriously unreliable and slow, and so I would like to see that rectified before we make any future expansions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. You know, there's some people who are temperamentally unsuited to driving who nevertheless still drive, so I appreciate your point very much. Thank you all very much. Thanks. I think we have one more person to testify, Ms. Vernier. I think
Veronica?
Oh, I'm at the last.
you may be. Anyone else who plans to speak before we close the hearing? You may get the last word.
That's all right. I love having the last word. Hi, good evening, Mayor. It's good to see you, Mayor Hale. It's always good to see you all looking well. Commissioner Amanda Fritz, you're looking well, and Commissioner Steve Novick. You're all looking well. Must have been well rested after Christmas vacation. I see that Dan Salzman has skipped out for just a minute. I'm sure he's attending to city business. And I don't see Nick Fish here right now, but I do welcome his input. I knew him from Sacramento, the State Board of Engineers. He's a man with a plan for all seasons. I was hoping to see him today. Speaking of plans for all seasons, I just wanted to bring up one thing, that if it's Murphy's Law, if something can go wrong, it will. And we had ourselves a great little snowstorm that was fun, dusting of fluffy white powder snow, about 6 to 8 inches, and it fell really lightly, and it was a big surprise on Sunday, and we all woke to it, and it was kind of like a delayed Christmas. What happened after the snowstorm was pretty predictable, and that's why I want to bring this up. During the snowstorm, 211 kicked in. This is a 211 card they do give you. And various people did call 211 for weather-related information, but also places to stay. People on the freeway were able to call 211 and get some help during the snowstorm. It's a good, viable system, and it helps even homeless and not wayward travelers, but people along the freeway. During the snowstorm, other things happened too, and that therein lies the plot. I'm a nurse, a former CVICU nurse. I've been in open heart surgery. I've been in MICUs and orthopedic units all over hospitals. Amanda knows, she's a nurse herself. And as nurses, we feel committed to preserving and protecting life, along the freeways and highways and byways. And I know that you all share the same values too. Sometimes in a snowstorm, we can get a deadlock in the freeway, and the traffic patterns break down and people get locked in. And locked in is what I wanted to bring to mention. When people get snowed in,
wrap up.
half minute. When people get snowed in, like the 455-pound man up on Mount Tabor, they get real desperate. And he did catch a TriMet bus, but the bus crashed into a telephone pole, and it was real unfortunate. And those are the kind of nitty-gritty issues we have to work for during a snowstorm. And I hope we can come up with a better plan. And I hope it doesn't snow again, but it may re-hit. You just never know. So it's a challenge for the Commissioner of Transportation and for yourself, Mayor Hills.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your help.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no one else who's here to testify, I'm going to close the hearing for purposes of verbal testimony and leave the record open until Friday at 5 p.m. for those that would like to submit anything further in written form. Catherine, other advice, please, from our city attorney?
Well, we have read one of only 2 items on the agenda.
Right, I'm sorry, we got to go back to that one. But for purposes of the comp plan itself,
Yes.
we're going to leave the record open for until Friday at 5 p.m.
Until Friday at 5
We might do that
p.m.
on the other document as well. I guess we could do both. So let's open that hearing and see if there's anyone here who's here to testify on what was item 28, but now has a different number. Help me again, Carla.
51-1.
Thank you.
Is adopt new and amended supporting documents for an update of Portland's comprehensive plan, except report of the Citizen Involvement Committee.
This is just about the supporting documents. Was there anyone here to testify on the supporting documents? Okay, so seeing none, then I'll close that hearing as well, right?
One very important thing, we need to continue the hearing on both items to a new date and time, which I believe we have settled on as April 14th at 6
p.m.
6 p.m.
Okay, so I'm closing testimony, continuing the hearing until that date, and as I mentioned earlier, there will be council work sessions in between in which we will consider the testimony and take up the question of amendments from each member of the council.
I'd just like to thank the planning staff for your diligence, both Adam, between the meetings, and particularly the logistics of helping people get in and out. It was extremely efficient and well done. Also, whoever schlepped the records to every single hearing, I'm really impressed. It's following the letter of the law, and there it is, sitting right there. So thank you very much for doing that.
I want to add my thanks as well. There's a lot of work underway. This is the most important document the city ever writes. So that's something I care a lot about. I know the whole council does. And we've just gotten a tremendous amount of excellent testimony from the community over the course of these hearings. And appreciate that about Portland very much. So thank you all. And if there's nothing further that we need to address on these items, then we are adjourned for this week.
No, we're not. I mean,
tomorrow.